The Jellison podcast is presented by Indy Lumberjack. They proudly offer reasonable rates, safe, top quality, courteous, efficient service. Let Indy Lumberjack help you reach your goal of maintaining beautiful and safe trees. They're by far the best in the business. You can get a free quote on indylumberjack.com or email indylumberjack@gmail.com for inquiries. Again, get a free quote on indylumberjack.com. What's up, everyone? We're back with another episode of the Jellison podcast, and they have a very special guest, Dr. Craig Perlman. Craig, how are you?
I'm good, Dub. Glad to be here. I was just saying just before we went on, you're an inspiration to everybody out there with type 1 diabetes.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I mean, I'm truly honored to be able to talk to you. Obviously, how we kind of came in contact was our mutual friend, Jordan Williams. You're providing him with insulin now. I mean, that really touched me. I remember when I was talking to him, when he first told me about it, we both started crying. So, I mean, it truly means a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Williams, the way the story really started is that I watched his fight on the Contender Series that was about a year ago. And we started hearing his story and the way that ESPN portrayed it. And I knew at that point I had to reach out to him, at that point. And I don't care to, I didn't care, I don't need any notoriety from it. I don't want that. But, it was one of those stories where I felt like I wanted to, whatever I could do to help out was really kind of, how I felt in, that moment. But, I mean, that's really the main the situation that I felt. I just learned that, in regards to type 1, diabetes, and in regards to the figures, and we just mentioned prior, I'm curious, to hear your story also on how, and how it motivated, you to follow, on the path to your own dream right now, being a mass communications major and, interviewing all these high profile athletes. I'm curious to hear your story on that as well. So, the feeling is mutual. I'm inspired by your story as well. So,
Yeah, Jordan's a huge inspiration to me. I mean, I've told him this. I mean, we talk almost every day now. He really encapsulates like what it means to be a diabetic and what it means to be a fighter. And I really resonated with that, just because of my past, and I have all the respect in the world for him.
Yeah, and there's one thing I remember when I spoke to Jordan. I spoke to Jordan a couple of times as well. Hands down, like one of the nicest guys I've ever spoken to.
Yeah.
I mean, 100% open. When you spoke to him on the interview, and his memory, it was exactly the conversation that I had with him. He just reiterated word for verbatim everything that we had spoken about. And I remember he mentioned at that time, I wanted to just reiterate, is that he defines himself as a diabetic.
Yeah.
So in general, the normal phrase diabetic, people often shy away from.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's considered like a label, So in his case, he owned that name. He goes, no, it's my identity as well. He's like, I'm a fighter, but I'm a diabetic. And I was like, wow, it's amazing how he took control of that and said, label me as that. He went beyond, as opposed to a person with diabetes, a person with type 1 diabetes. So it was a totally different scenario that he takes it. He kind of captured it, and it's his identity as well, which is, which you don't hear often. I mean, I even told him about scenarios in which there are plenty of people out there who deny the illness. Unfortunately, you can't deny it.
Yeah.
Because because everyone, you understand, just as much as everyone else, that, it's something that you have to live with every day. It's something that you have to work on. People with type 1 diabetes have more hardships overall than people without type 1 diabetes. They have to be aware that they have to, they have to be cognizant of their blood sugars. They have to be cognizant of what they eat. They have to be cognizant of their carbohydrate intake. They have to be cognizant of their daily activities, their workouts, everything. So, I understand that it's not easy. The life of someone with type 1 diabetes overall is tougher. Is it livable? Of course it's livable, but it's a work in progress. It is. And I think that's something that has to always be worked on.
How I kind of look at it is, I mean, there's people who can't walk, like they're in a wheelchair their entire lives. I mean, my situation compared to some other people's is minuscule. So I kind of take that with me. But I mean, you mentioned it a little bit. Like when I was younger, I would try to hide my diabetes, and I still do to a certain extent. But I really wouldn't talk about it. And I know, like me and I grew up with another kid that had diabetes, and we were like kind of ashamed of having it. And I feel like if younger kids have people like Jordan to look up to, like for me, it was Jay Cutler. I actually met him at Eli Lilly in downtown Indianapolis.
Oh, wow.
Someone to just look up to and be like, hey, this guy is being so successful, or girl is being so successful with having type 1 diabetes. I think it allows you to like branch out and just come to the terms that, hey, this is the card I was dealt, and I'm gonna have to live with it, but I'm gonna do the best I can.
Right. Yeah. I think you couldn't have phrased it any better in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I can, if you want me to share some stories. I'll leave the floor to you. Right? You want me to? I'll ask you questions about your situations and whatnot, and your what you have to overcome. I mean, one thing, you're 21 years old. Sorry, 20, right?
Yeah.
20. 20 years old with type 1 diabetes is definitely a large obstacle. That is considered one of the higher obstacles. A college student with type 1 diabetes, I typically see in the office, that's the time period where young adults tend to forget that they actually have type 1 diabetes. They're good before high school because the parents are watching you, the helicopter moms are keeping a close eye on you. You're being reminded, to check your blood glucose. You're being reminded to bolus before the meal. You're being reminded at all times. Your mom's waking you up in the middle of the night, or she's doing it quickly while you're sleeping. So she or he or your father is keeping a close eye on you. Then you go away to college, and that represents a whole different scenario in life. So we often do see that time period of the hemoglobin A1C. For the listeners out there, the hemoglobin A1C represents the approximately the 3-month average of your blood glucose levels at all times. So our goal for people with type 1 diabetes is less than 7% classically, but we usually see those A1Cs rise during the college years. We see 10% and higher, extremely common. And then after college, when they enter the real life, they tend to the A1C start coming back down. So it's a scenario that plays out in my practice, on a daily basis. So
yeah.
But just on a thing I wanted to add to this, that between there's 2 types of diabetes. There are other types of diabetes, but the 2 main types are type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. And I think a frustration that a lot of people with type 1 diabetes hear is that they classically want to be lectured to, or no, that they don't want to be, but other people want to lecture them in regards to diet. They're like, oh, that's because you got to really watch your diet, low carb diet, etc. There's truth to that, but that's more in regards to type 2 diabetes, in regards to lifestyle changes in diet. With type 1 diabetes, granted, blood glucose levels will be, it's much easier to control with a low carb diet, but in general, a lot of it has to do with math when it comes to type 1 diabetes. You have to know your carbohydrate ratios. So you have to know how much insulin your body needs for a certain amount of grams of carbohydrates that you ingest. So that's where there's a scenario that they have to deal with. People think that it's lifestyle that affects your control of type 1 diabetes and dietary intervention. It's actually, a lot of it comes down to straight math. You technically have to be pretty good at math in regards to counting carbs when you have type 1 diabetes. I mean, the truth is, you look at the average person with type 1 diabetes, you look at the average person with type 2. Type 2, they're more likely to be overweight or obese. Type 1s are not likely to be overweight or obese. It's actually the opposite. And remember, only approximately 90 to 95% of all people with diabetes have type 2 diabetes. So that's the situation where they have higher amounts of insulin resistance. They actually produce more insulin than the average person without diabetes, but their body can't process it. And a lot of that has to do with increase in fat. It has to do with an overwhelming inflammation. There's actually fat deposition into the liver, the pancreas, and skeletal muscle, which impairs the absorption of and utilization of insulin. For type 1s, such as you yourself, the issue really there is that your pancreas doesn't make insulin. It's been affected by an environmental cause, usually a viral infection. When you were 3 years old, a viral illness, let's say be Epstein-Barr or CMV, and combined with your genetic predisposition. So they know there are certain chromosomes that have been altered that have predisposed you to a high propensity to develop an autoimmune disease. Type 1 diabetes is so different than type 2 diabetes. It's two completely different diseases, 100%. When I like to tell my patients with type 1 diabetes, it affects the beta cells in the pancreas that inhibits your ability to produce insulin. Mm-hmm. And it tends to not really affect other aspects. So think of it just as that one cell. The cell that helps your body raise your glucose levels is not affected. It's the beta cell that's affected, that one cell. And fortunately, the technology keeps improving, So I mean, it is so much easier as an endocrinologist to manage people with diabetes, type 1 or type 2 also, obviously, now than when I started my fellowship training in 2006. So it's like, hands down, my job is so much easier now than it was. And that's thanks to technological advancement, as well as the advancement of certain medications. So it's been great, definitely there, obviously the key is that in the future, life with type 1 diabetes is going to be easier and easier for you moving on, from this point, and that's it,
Yeah, I mean, like when I was diagnosed in 2003, so I mean, I was doing injections, and I mean, it was really my mom doing it for me, but she was like making all the calculations and all that stuff. Up until I was like 9 or 10, I believe, is when I got my insulin pump. And I mean, that changed the game. And then fast forward 5-6 years later, I get a Dexcom G6. That changes the game even more. So I don't have to test my blood as often, myself to like calibrate it and things of that nature. But yeah, I mean, it's leaps and bounds easier than it was when I was first diagnosed.
Yeah. And do you also notice that you're having less hypoglycemic episodes? Now, let's say compared to, I mean, granted, when you at a young age in the pediatric population, it's much more, hypoglycemia is a much more concerning issue than in the adult population. because of neural development, et cetera. So we always leave the hemoglobin A1C, the 3-month blood glucose averages, higher in those younger populations compared to the adult population. But regardless, so your mom probably was aware as you progressed through adolescence that it was becoming easier. One of the reasons also is the initiation of some of the newer insulins to the market. So prior to 1981, there was no human insulin. It was bovine and porcine insulin, and so that was extracted from that. There were issues with multiple insulin allergies then to these different formulations. They were less predictable. After 1981, you had Humulin or Novolin R. Insulin, that's regular insulin, which typically lasts 6 hours, and you had Humulin N, that's the NPH, so neutral protamine Hagedorn insulin, which was typically given twice daily, which would have a duration of action of roughly half a day, 12 hours, up to 12 hours, and that's what you had up until 1996, in which you had the rapid-acting insulin, so Humalog and Novolog, and those were great because they were more rapid-acting. And remember, the whole purpose is we want to mimic the human physiology as much as possible, as close to as possible. But we're not there yet, actually. Our body sends insulin into our bloodstream much faster than any form of synthetic form of insulin that we can produce, that Eli Lilly can produce down in Indianapolis, so it's like, so we're not there yet, actually. Now, what was great though is remember, you have two forms of insulin, let's say through your insulin pump, the continuous subcutaneous insulin infusion. One is a basal level, so our bodies are always producing insulin, and another one is this insulin spikes. And those are the surges that we need to bring the nutrients into, up into our muscles, tissues, etc. So in 1999 was the advent of the long-acting insulin. But prior to that, we had no form of long-acting insulin to mimic our basal insulin requirements, and that was Lantus. And then fast forward 10 years, and now we've developed the ultra long-acting insulins. And the benefit of the ultra long-acting insulins, such as Tresiba, Toujeo, those insulins, the benefit of them is that there's a lower risk of hypoglycemia compared to the use of Lantus and Levemir. So that's what's more beneficial. So our goal is to have our blood glucose levels as low as possible without incurring hypoglycemia, essentially. So when leading back to Jordan Williams was that when I read the ESPN article, which I remember speaking to him about, and I remember he was kind of a little bit, pissed off about the article. I said, when he mentioned, remember, I technically I cannot speak though about him and my interaction, because that is a HIPAA violation if I start talking about how our discussions in regards to his management. So I can't talk about that. But what I can do is talk about generalization of how do we manage like athletes with diabetes. But based on that article though, because I did see in this article, what he mentioned was they said insulin from a vet. And we saw that on the ESPN article. So I definitely want to clarify that as well, because I know he was very concerned that he's like, I'm not taking dog insulin. And it's actually the opposite. He's taking, it was human insulin, but the vets just happen to use that insulin. But the issue is, and this I can mention because I mentioned on Instagram, he's holding up the insulin pens like this. He's like, "Thank you, Dr. Perlman." And I was like, "Oh my God." I got to tell you, when I spoke to him, I was starstruck too, like I was definitely, because I was just, it was really in my mind. I felt so, I felt like, I needed to reach out. I wanted to help out regardless. And then I'm on the phone talking to him, and I was just like, wow, this is weird. This is like, I'm totally starstruck right now. So I'm holding up. He's holding up the Traceba pens, and he's saying, he's like, I got my newest insulin. So now the key is the benefit of the insulin that I gave him was the insulin before, which was what I mentioned before, the NPH and the Humulin R. Those insulins were designed in the 1980s, so that was more than 30 years ago. So he's dealing with, he was forced to deal with technology from, more than 30 years ago. So I was like, let's fast forward 30 years. And the advantages of these insulins, one, the rapid acting insulin Humalog, you could tie it closer to the meal. You actually have a lower risk of hypoglycemia because it's going to match closer to the meal, not 100% perfect. And the Traceba has a much lower risk of hypoglycemia. It's one injection daily, even though the half-life is, longer. But so therefore, for an athlete with type 1 diabetes, the amount of the level of intensity and the activity that these guys and girls endure is so intense. How do they not become hypoglycemic in the middle of a workout? It must happen. And therefore, it disrupts their workout. It disrupts their training. So essentially, they have to drink so much orange juice. You already know this. I'm just, drink so much orange juice, so much Gatorade prior to get their blood sugar probably to 300 as it goes down. So by the end of the workout, maybe they're at 90 or 80, if not experiencing hypoglycemia during the workout. The benefit of the newer insulins, like I mentioned, the Traceba or Toujeo, long-acting, could kind of benefit that they wouldn't have to bring their blood sugar so much higher, but I'm pretty sure they probably still do.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, if you're on an insulin infusion, so are you on a subcutaneous insulin infusion?
Like a pump?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, are you on a pump?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the insulin pumps, which are fantastic for so many reasons right now. But if you're an athlete, let's say you're Jay Cutler, and let's say he's on an insulin pump. I don't know what he's on. I don't know. You know more about his diabetes management than I do, I'm sure. So, but I'm just guessing. So, but what he can do with his insulin, pump in that scenario is he can possibly take it off for the game, for the training, put it back on 2 or 3 hours later. There's still some rapid acting insulin on board. He's okay. And then go about his day.
Yeah.
But what about MMA athletes? That is a whole different scenario. So a lot of these other sports, they can do that. But let's say a mixed martial art athlete, they have the infusion set there. So they're rolling on there. That thing is going to pop off every time. Every time they're rolling, every time they're training, it's going to come up. So it's a much harder dilemma for an MMA fighter, mixed martial arts, or a Brazilian jiu-jitsu grappler. If it's essentially a contact sport like that, it's going to be tough. I think with football, and baseball and most other sports, you can have the infusion set still there and come back to it after, most likely. I mean, sometimes I'm sure it'll come out, but it's going to be more secure. I'm sorry?
I said 100%. I used to play baseball, and if I'd slide a certain way or something, it would fall off or rip off, and it hurt really bad. But some of the athletes I talked to with type 1 diabetes, like Gary Forbes, Charlie Kimball, and Jordan, they were all kind of reluctant to get a pump. I know in Charlie's case, he's an IndyCar driver, so he didn't know how the heat of going through a 3-4 hour race, how that would the pump. And then Gary Forbes, what's that?
Oh, sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead. I'll ask my question after I cut you off. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. My bad.
And then Gary Forbes, he's playing the NBA. He was just kind of hesitant to get it just because he hasn't, he's had diabetes for so long and he's always used injections. So he didn't really want the pump. So what was your question?
Yeah. Yeah, but what you said, patient preference is
Mhm.
exactly. We always take that into account. Patient preference is number one. The my question was I forgot. I don't know. I forgot. But I'll get back to it. I guess I don't know. Um, I tend to forget a lot of things.
Oh,
But patient preference, one thing which is an obstacle in the office is that, which kind of is really, a struggle, is that the insulin pump companies don't really provide you that with that much of an option of a trial.
yeah.
You can return in 30 days, but they really it seems like it's very tough. It's an obstacle for
Mhm.
most patients. It's like you have it or you don't. That's it, and you wish there were these like more opportunities. I'm sure they exist, these like 30-day trials, but more opportunities. Like, try it, you don't like it, one thing I encourage in my practice is just all different options. I'll never, patient preference is important of 100%, but definitely, like, providing, multiple options, and whether it be multiple daily insulin injections versus an insulin pump, you
Mhm.
know. And going back to the other thing was the sensors, the continuous sensors. So, like, the majority of the endocrine community, believes that, the continuous glucose sensor was the biggest technologic advancement, biggest diabetes advancement, technologically speaking or non-technologically speaking,
Yeah.
the biggest advancement in the management of diabetes, hands down. And we're well aware of that. But the issue for, let's say, mixed martial arts fighters such as Jordan Williams is that thing's gonna,
Yeah.
how's it gonna stay on?
Mhm.
It's not, right. It can't. If you're rolling, then it's coming right off, like, in a
Another
second.
thing is
So there are limitations. I'm sorry.
another thing is like I don't know how like organizations like the UFC would handle him wearing that in the octagon.
Right. Right.
So like
Yeah.
there's a bunch of
Yeah.
things that go into it. I mean, that's really a common theme with diabetes, though. It's so many moving parts that, I mean, it's hard to get them all in a straight line. So you're doing everything right. Like something always seems like it's about to go wrong or and things of that nature. I wanted to get back to you and your career. What made you want to become an endocrinologist? Like, at what age did you kind of think, hey, this is my calling?
So in general, like, med school is so broad, medical school. So in general, there's a certain percentage of students that know what they want to do before going to medical school. The majority of us don't, though.
Yeah.
The one actual uh, one field of medicine that for some reason they say the average person knows by the age of 5 years old that they want to be is an orthopedic surgeon. I didn't want to be a surgeon, no way. But I would say when you go through your clinical clerkships, so your first 2 years are lecture, and then third and fourth year, your clinical clerkships, which means that you're on the hospital floors, and you're essentially just you're not doing much. You're writing some notes and you're following people around. But at the same time, though, the medical attendings are asking you questions. And I remember one of my clerkships was in endocrinology, and I felt like I'm comfortable in this, and I think I can be good at this. So in general, wherever you go in life, obviously you have to go where whatever inspires you and what you want to do. But I think the other factor is you have to go towards the area that you're good at, though, and that you're confident in. That's a big thing. So I think that was one of the areas that I felt comfortable and confident in the area, in the field.
Mhm. And so well, now my former endocrinologist, Dr. Juan Sanchez, he was telling me that he had to go through like 14 years of school and his residency to become a pediatric endocrinologist. So what was that time frame like for you?
Oh yeah. So let's see. I'm pretty old. I'm 45 years old, uh, and even though I look 60, uh,
You do not look 45 though. You look younger than that.
oh, thanks. You realize actually, I run a lot, so I became really skinny. So when you get skinny, you lose any fat in your face, which only makes you look older.
Oh.
So, but I would say I graduated. I went to Stony Brook undergrad, and I graduated in 1998. I started medical school. I went to New York College of Osteopathic Medicine, which is in Long Island. I started there in 1999 and graduated in 2003. And then I did a residency in internal medicine, so it's adult medicine, at Winthrop University Hospital on Long Island, Mineola. And then I finished 3 years of residency. And then I did a fellowship at the same hospital, Winthrop University Hospital, from 2006 to 2008. So essentially, and then started my own private practice here on Long Island in Bethpage in 2008. Oh, and speaking of MMA, I am in the same office building as the strength and conditioning coaches for multiple UFC fighters in the same building. So there's Jean Vellante, and then Stipe Miocic is here sometimes. Chris Weidman's here all the time. Ally Quinta, Chris Algieri, the boxer, and it's Jonathan Amato. Also, he's like the coach, and then Mike Camp. Also, I know he's also the strength and conditioning coach and physical therapy for all these guys. And we see my office moved from the front side of the building to the back, so I don't see the parking lot anymore. So I used to see all these guys come in. I remember Dennis Bermudez all the time. So I was always a big UFC fan, just like you, for many years. I was obviously longer though. Yeah. I was a big Andre Arlovsky fan originally. That was like my first superhero. 2006. It was when he was heavyweight champion at UFC, and it's amazing. He just won also.
Yeah,
I just can't believe he's still fighting. The heavyweights can fight long, man. Probably.
Oh, I know.
They can. The heavyweights seem to go a long time. Yeah. That's why I think Vellante moved from light heavyweight to heavyweight. So I think I can see him going on to a longer career, because once they're heavyweights, it seems like they last longer.
Yeah,
he's got a fight coming up too.
I mean, they don't have to cut weight, and they don't have to do things like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, they do obviously last longer at heavyweight, but it's just like one of those weird things.
Yeah. Who knows? I guess it is also. I think a lot of it is speed. Is one of the first things that goes down as you get older, and speed is such an essential component of the lower weight divisions, and possibly it's less of a component at the heavyweight division. I think that's why, because the fine motor actually continues to develop even later, into your 40s, Yeah. So cardio doesn't actually, believe it or not, cardio goes down slower. It's really the speed is really the first thing that really drops fast. Yeah. So,
yeah.
But it's great here though, seeing all these.
Yeah.
But
I was interested to see if, it got lost when we were in our conversation, but I was interested to see if you were an MMA fan before this, or you just kind of heard about Jordan's story through the diabetes community.
So I heard of Jordan Williams' story though through watching just Dana White Contender series, not through there. And I'm so happy that you speak to him every night and stuff. And if you speak to him tonight, tell him I said hi. I'm gonna try to reach out to him also. When I watched the last fight, after his fight, I couldn't watch the rest of the night. I don't know if did you feel that kind of similar? I couldn't watch the fights after his fight because I was just kind of down. I was like, I can't watch any more fights. I was like, I felt like I woke up in a sad mood, and I can't wait to see him, like, fight again. Like I kind of like felt like it was, and then hearing, there was an article also about the cervical fracture
Mhm.
and from the pride fight, and the damages incurred. It was like,
Yeah,
so how's he doing?
he's doing well.
Oh,
He's got some fight news. I'll tell you when we're off here. He doesn't want me sharing it with the world, but
awesome. All right.
he's got his next fight lined up. Um, one
Oh,
thing
nice.
one thing I wanted to talk about, and I think it's probably the most pressing issue, um, aside from the science and like the body of a diabetic, is the price of insulin. Um, I mean, obviously, you help Jordan out because, I mean, it's tough when you're coming up and on the regional scene in MMA um, to make big money. So insulin was hard to come by. So why do you think that the insulin prices are so high right now?
So I think that his issue is not really about the prices in insulin. I actually think the issue there is more about health insurance in general,
Hmm.
and the state of healthcare in America. I think that's actually yeah, the situation is bigger than that. And the truth is, though, is like the UFC it's a global sport, and it spans all different healthcare systems.
Yeah.
So when the fans in the UK hear online, when they hear on the show that Jordan Williams had received this gift,
Hmm.
and it's like, there's different forms of healthcare in different parts of the world,
Yeah.
where other places we have universal healthcare, as if insulin should be a gift. It should not be as a gift. It should be a right, to,
Hmm.
as opposed to a privilege. And not to sound political, the truth is, this isn't political.
I
I
agree.
don't consider this political. I feel that anybody should, and if we're living in America, we should have the right, especially as someone with type 1 diabetes, should have the right to be provided with the best managed insulin available. One that's more conducive to anybody's lifestyle, whatever it is. But everybody should have the right to have the availability towards the best care. And I think that representation, when that on UFC, when they said that, it definitely seemed as though there had to have been a couple of red flags there.
Yeah.
Like, why do we live in a society right now where where we're not we're not treated equally when it comes to healthcare? Why does one person, why is one person have to, it has to be provided with, insulin that's, outdated over 30 years, when we have newer insulins that will work more effectively. The certain insulins, like the NPH insulin, there's a higher amount of not only variability in your blood glucose levels between different people, but actually within yourself, within that day. Like NPH insulin, you take it on a Monday, it's going to act different on Tuesday than Monday,
Yeah.
as compared to Tresiba and Tugea, which are slightly different, but less, variability in the numbers, though. So I feel like that definitely is an issue. There's a lot of reasons for why that is, and a lot of it has to do with the way that our healthcare system is set up, where our healthcare system is employer-based healthcare as opposed to universal healthcare. Hopefully one day we're moving in that direction. Hopefully one day in the future, I hope I don't sound too political, but hopefully someday in the future, though, sooner than later, that universal healthcare, it's moving in that direction. People don't understand that Medicare and Medicaid, those are forms of socialized, care, and, there are certain things, why is it that your job is dependent on your healthcare, your employer's decisions on what type of health insurance when you turn a certain age. So I think that because our healthcare is employer based, you know, I feel potentially there are plenty of stars in different realms of our society and life in general that we will lose because they're forced to take another role in life because they have to put the concerns of themselves and their families healthcare. So they're going to choose another job over, let's say, their dream because they need more effective healthcare, a better healthcare policy than the one that they have. So there's a lot of things. So, who knows what direction we're going. But there's certain avenues that people really don't, talk about it. It's unfortunate, but hopefully things change. But I think price of insulin is only one aspect, of it. I think so, and I think that's the issue.
I mean,
Yes.
I don't think you sounded political. I know you kind of mentioned that
Okay.
a couple times, but I mean, I'm lucky enough to where my dad has a good job where he has really good insurance to cover my expenses, and I know that's helped out my family a lot. I wish everyone could get their insulin for free or for cheaper than it is right now. But I want to talk about that it was the fight after, I believe, when he was in Abu Dhabi. What was it like to hear your name being said on ESPN when Brendan Fitzgerald gave you a little like shout out?
Oh, well, a couple of my friends and a couple of my patients that I didn't know were MMA fans called me up, or I saw them at their next visits, and they were like, "I heard your name." I was like, "Wow!" I was like, "You're a UFC fan." So that was pretty interesting. That was definitely, honestly, I don't want any notoriety in any way, but I actually have fun doing like the like this interview with you. This is definitely a pleasure and stuff. But in all honesty, when I spoke to Jordan, I didn't want any sort of, I didn't want, he's like, "No, I want to give you this."
That's exactly.
He's like, "I want to give you this." Yeah. He's like, "No, I'm not going to let you. I want you to give you the notoriety. I want to tell everyone what a nice guy you are." I was like, "No, it's okay." Yeah. The only thing I wanted in return was that my two nephews, they're both big baseball fans. So I still have to send them out a Team Rebel, Long Island Rebel jersey that he said on a future interview. So maybe on your next interview with him, my only request is that he wears a Team Rebel jersey. That's his baseball team. I got a picture of him here. Yeah, that's Dean and JP.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how he was with me too. After he won his Contender Series fight, Lorisenko was interviewing him, and literally the first words out of his mouth were, "I talked about this on a podcast called the Jellison podcast," and I about lost my.
That's awesome.
He did that, and we exchanged shirts. I think his is dirty right now because I wore it the other day, but he sent me a shirt. I sent him one of mine for the podcast, and he was posting with it like all the time. And I mean, he's just so supportive of people that show support in him.
He is like the inspiration for people with type 1 diabetes, and that's what he wants to be.
Yeah.
Like you hear it in him. He is so motivated, but his motivation is he carries the banner for type 1 diabetes, and he obviously carries more than one banner, but he chooses to show the banner of type 1 diabetes. I mean, think about his scenario, if he chooses to go a different route to get more adequate health care, then at that point we lose him as an inspiration for everybody out there with type 1 diabetes.
Yeah.
You know, and he easily in the future could go that route for the issues in getting better health care, you know. So people don't realize that when people say, like, you know, the fact that our system is employer based means that a lot of people are switching their careers where they may pose much more benefit to society at large. If it wasn't, people choose their jobs and their careers based on their healthcare, obviously. You know, I'm just glad to help out and be able to afford him some opportunity to, like, not have to think about that decision, you know, like, and I think that's, yeah, I don't think I really spoke to him clearly about this aspect, you know, like, he's like, thanks so much. He's like, why'd you do it? I don't know, I just wanted to, you know, but I think that was like my true reason really for doing it is that, you know, helping out and really just feeling, you know, I think I just wanted to help out, you know, I wanted to just help, like, you know, I just wanted it to, you know, and I don't want any notoriety at all, you know. I like you like when you contacted me and asked if I could do the the podcast to reach out, I was like, yeah, definitely, man, you know. And I definitely like the conversation stuff. But when they mentioned on UFC, I was like, because you kind of knew that Jordan Williams went to him and said, mention this guy's name. Like, you just know the guy's so nice that he's like, yeah, can you mention his name? Can you mention it? Yeah. What else is Jordan Williams like? You know him a lot better than I do, obviously, because you speak to him every night. Do you mind if you share some information more about him?
I mean, he's just so motivated, and I keep going back to it, but like, he shows support and love for people that show love and support for him. So I mean, like, if you do something for him, he's always going to return the favor no matter what. And I mean, that's pretty much like the most, in my opinion, that's like the most honorable trait a person can have, is being trustworthy and being there for people and not wanting to receive without giving back, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that's altruism. Yeah, so he definitely represents altruism, you know, which is great. Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely hope. I'm excited that what you said before about upcoming fight and stuff, you know, and that's great news also, you know. I only wish the best for him also, you know, like, I think, but you're right. When I watched that fight, I felt that I was so emotionally invested in that fight that I felt like as though I couldn't sit on the couch. Like, I was shaking while watching the fight. I was like, huh, like that. And I woke up the next morning like depressed, as if I felt like I had lost. You know, like, I felt like we were in that, you know, and like, you realize that it's like, I mean, he is an inspiration to everybody with type 1 diabetes, hands down, the way that he carries it. I mean, there's nobody that carries it the same way that he does. Other high profile people, athletes, musicians, they don't carry it the same way that he does, you know. It's a little different, you know. I'm sure there are that I not that I know of, though. You know, I mean, it shows that you know, the perseverance that he goes through and everything, and you can tell that that's definitely and the way that he, you know, grapples with it, you know. It's profound to watch. You don't see that a lot. You know, a lot of people that power, and that's how he is 24/7. I'm sure, probably, right?
Yeah.
Like that, yeah. Especially if you speak to her every night, it's always, yeah. That's great.
100%.
I mean, I was looking at it like his when I like looked up online after I said, I was like, you know, it showed that he was the junior college California state champion wrestler, you know, like, essentially, like, this is like, you know, he's like, he was bred for MMA,
Yeah.
essentially. Now you could see that
100%.
that was the direction. Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to wrap this up. I don't want to hold you any longer.
Oh yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, it's truly an honor to be able to talk to you. Thank you for not only what you did for him, both of our friend, but I mean, what you're doing for diabetics just in general. I know I speak on behalf of all diabetics when I say we're so appreciative of the work that you and other endocrinologists do and your guys' team.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah. Oh, and also I just want to finish up with one note.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have patients to see also actually, but I think we're like 6 weeks. I'm not sure how much I provided. I don't know the exact amount of insulin I provided him. I think it was definitely more than 3 months. I'm assuming though.
Yeah.
But when you reach out to him, ask him how much he has left. He has enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk to him right after that.
And yeah, awesome. Maybe I'll message him also on Instagram also and stuff. And then I got to send out that Team Rebel shirt. The team they're in a little bit of a crisis. They said they lost 6 of the players, but they have tryouts coming up though. It's for the 11U Long Island Rebel Team Rebel. Yeah. Cool. So we're a little bit of a crisis though, but I gotta get a sweatshirt, send it. And but they're in winter training. It'll be winter training. And also for COVID, I want to mention one thing about COVID. Obviously it's surging right now. And I just wanted to mention one thing also is that to make sure that everybody needs a disaster plan, so the main thing is that this is a disaster plan. God forbid, there's the scenario. Everybody with type 1 diabetes needs a disaster plan. They need backup insulin. The other consideration is making sure plenty of ice packs just in case the power goes out. They need, I think everybody with type 1 diabetes should have like a backup generator for a fridge to keep, the insulin cool enough. And then enough of supply for, I think everybody should have at least a 3-month supply of insulin, if not more, always on board with the proper supplies and everything. So with COVID going, that's definitely, regardless any scenario, everybody should have a disaster plan, I think, with type 1 diabetes. So
yeah,
so
I agree.
That's really about it. Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, stay safe.
All right, you too.
I'll see you later.